Something I remind myself in those moments of insecurity is that people might leave. I could be fully, totally in love with someone and they still might leave. And you know what? It would really, really suck, but my heart has been broken before and eventually I'm okay. And it's not something I want to go through. It's not something that I obviously hope would ever happen to me or to anyone ever again. But it is a fact of life that when you're in any relationship, whether it's a friendship, family relationship, romantic relationship, you're not fully in control. And I think that's one of the hardest things about love of any kind is there's a lot you don't have control over. And one of the things you don't have control over is whether or not someone stays. I wasn't planning to film today, but I thought that I would because it's kind of gorgeous. You gotta look at this. Hi. Hi, my love. Oh, yeah, I know you're a pretty girl. There's something so wonderful, about a cat. So talking about attachment styles, I feel like I used to have such a big fear of people leaving me, but an idea I want to introduce you to is that people might leave, and if they do, you'll be okay. Because I think I used to put a lot of stake in my being okay in if someone else thought I was good enough. I would feel okay about myself as long as someone had a crush on me. Okay, if you see me like down here, it's because we're playing. If I'm like kind of moving the camera around a little bit, because I want to make sure she's still getting attention. I feel like I used to stake so much of my self-worth in if I had a romantic interest, if someone thought I was beautiful, if someone thought I was pretty, if someone thought that in some way I was good enough, because at the time I didn't have the tools to validate myself or get my validation from people who have known me longer and who have loved me through everything, because one of the most constant loves in the world is friendship and family. Obviously there's going to be people who have bad relationships with their family or who don't have a lot of close friends, but in my experience, so I'm just speaking for me, when I think about who has been there for me through all the heartbreaks, through all the times that I've thought I wasn't good enough, through all the phases I've gone through, from all the mental stages that I've been in, and that's my friends and that's my friends and my family. And I think it's easy to put a lot of our self-worth into if we have romantic validation. And I think for girls especially, we can put a lot of our worth in male validation. And I'm in a lovely relationship right now with a man. But, sometimes I catch myself having those old anxious attachment style thoughts come up, or like sometimes they can still be activated, even though I've made so much progress in that department. And I've written something about this, which I'll link my Substack in the description. But I've written an article about anxious attachment and how I kind of overcame it. But it's something I struggled with for so long. And so, like with any habit, because it is a habit, it's a habitual form of thinking. And with any habit, sometimes it's going to creep back in. Maybe you're feeling really tired and you don't have a lot of emotional bandwidth, and so your old kind of insecurities start coming up. Or maybe you have a trigger, like maybe you don't hear from someone for longer than you usually don't hear from them. It's so easy to fall into these traps of thinking, especially if you're someone who's actively still struggling with anxious attachment. Like, it's not still something that just comes up time to time. It's something that's like constantly there, and I've been there. But, I do have these moments where it comes back up because I'm human and because unlearning anything is not linear. And so what I do is I remind myself, you know what? People might leave me. People might decide one day that they don't like me anymore. Sorry, the only type of bug I will kill is a mosquito. I'm sorry, I love bugs, I love all animals, but a mosquito, Something I remind myself in those moments of insecurity is that people might leave. I could be fully, totally in love with someone, and they still might leave. And you know what? It would really, really suck, but my heart has been broken before, and eventually I'm okay. And it's not something I want to go through. It's not something that I obviously hope would ever happen to me or to anyone ever again. But it is a fact of life that when you're in any relationship, whether it's a friendship, family relationship, romantic relationship, you're not fully in control. And I think that's one of the hardest things about love of any kind, is there's a lot you don't have control over. And one of the things you don't have control over is whether or not someone stays. And, you know, I think it's so easy to think that the world would fall to pieces and there wouldn't even be a reason to be living anymore if a certain person left our life. But, you know, I can tell you, I've had multiple people leave my life, whether because I broke up with them or because they broke up with me, or, you know, this, that, or the other thing. Sorry, she totally sees something. Look at that stance. I've had people leave. I've had people see some of the things I struggle with and be like, you know what, that's too much. And that's okay, because for the right people, you'll be exactly enough. And you know what? Even with the right people, they might one day decide to leave. And don't forget that one day you might decide to leave too. You just don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's really easy to put a lot of value in the future and in what someone else thinks of us. But when you're thinking about a future with other people, there's uncertainty there. And you don't have control over that. And that is really scary. And part of love is trusting someone and opening yourself up to someone and letting them in, knowing that one day they might not be there. And it would be really tough if some people left. But you know what? You would make it through. And I would make it through. Because we've made it through hard things before. We've made it through rejection and breakups and all kinds of issues before. And you can make it through the person leaving who you never thought you could live without. And I hope that I know it probably is not that helpful, but for me that mindset change was really helpful, because it was it kept me from feeling like I needed to have control once I accepted that I would never have it. Because you just have to realize you'll never have control over what another person does, ever. Ever. What someone else does is entirely up to them. Even when you're in a relationship that you think is going to last forever, sometimes it doesn't. And it can be a very sad thing. But remember that it can also be a very transformative thing. And sometimes someone not wanting to be with you anymore is the beginning of you forming a healthier and more fulfilling and validating relationship with yourself, where you don't put so much worth in what other people think of you and whether or not they accept you. So that's all I got. That's all I got to say tonight. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Yeah, see you next time.